want to do the invitation? Ready? Yes. Okay, call to order the December 17th City Council meeting. First up with Mr. Lewis, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Lord, we're humbly coming before you, thankful for another opportunity to be here today. We want to please allow us to continue to give you the glory, especially during this special time of the year. Allow us to reach out to our brothers and sisters, be a shining light and beacon, especially for those with the Christmas season coming that may have difficulty. Allow us to put our arms around them, embrace them as brothers and sisters in the Lord. Also want to say a special prayer for Miss Myrna Green and the many great things she did for our community. Lord, we ask that you are with her now. Continue to you and Miss Myrna watch over us, guide us, and keep our community safe. Lord, please allow this council to make the most prudent decisions, and doing so with the most humbly mindset, what you bestowed upon all of us, Lord. And so we will end this prayer with our Father.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, I'd like to thank Mr. Lewis for mentioning Miss Myrna Green in her prayers. She was a devoted servant to the Hancock County Tourism. She served for many years, and she's done many good things. And I wish her the best and pray for her often. Thank you. Are there any amendments to, Gene, you want to amend the agenda?
So I had tabled the discussion for the short-term rental thing from last time. Was the lady that was going to speak was unable to attend. She was sick. So I just wanted to bring that back on there and see if we could call her up as a guest.
Okay.
So she didn't have to wait.
Okay, I got a few announcements, and then we'll call them. Can you give me the name for record?
It's actually on the email that I gave you there, but her name is Miss Megan Delgado.
Thank you. Excuse me, I'm a little bit weather in the cold today, so I'll be a little crackly. Let's see, December 24th and 25th, City Hall will be closed. December 31st, New Year's Eve, the oyster drop. And city will be closed for that too, right, Mike? For New Year's Eve? No, New Year's Day? Okay. January, I just mentioned New Year's Day, City Hall will be closed. January 7th is the next council meeting. Let's go ahead and add Megan Delgado, and if you would, you can come up and address us, please.
Provided
She'll be
the email that she sent out, I think Caitlin had forwarded it about 2-3 weeks ago when we first got it, but I brought a copy for everybody as well.
Okay, thank you.
My husband actually wanted to say a few words too, and
That's
Miss
fine.
Ann after that too. All right, my name's Megan Delgado. I live at 207 Union, and I wanted to talk about the short-term rental regulation. We rent a portion of our home out. It's a historic home built in 1860, and we've been doing that for about 6 years now. So in regards to these regulations, I think we really need to ask 3 critical questions. What is the goal of the regulations? Do the regulations that we passed meet that goal? And is enforcement fair and effective? In past meetings, the council admitted there's been no data collected regarding the issues addressed in the ordinance. So you really don't even know if short-term rentals are causing problems for the city. And you can't say if short-term rentals are any less safe than long-term rentals or residential housing. You're singling out short-term rentals because you can. You looked on the major platforms online, singled us out, sent us letters telling us to comply or we'll be fined $500 and charged with a misdemeanor without due process. And I'd like to point out there's already a pending lawsuit over this ordinance. That's a real problem. Now, I could go line by line pointing out problems with this ordinance, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to point out a few major issues tonight. So for noise, you already have an ordinance for noise. This is redundant. Just enforce what you have. It's not effective to call the property owner in the middle of the night regarding a noise complaint. The police should address a noise complaint. They should address a noise violation at short-term rentals just like they do every other time a noise violation is made. We already have an ordinance. Just go out there, enforce what you have. Enforcement using $500 fines and charging property owners with a misdemeanor is really a gross miscarriage of justice. It's the same model being used across other industries in the town. Would you ever consider charging buoys or triple tails with a misdemeanor for a violation of the noise ordinance? Would you consider shutting them down after 3 violations? Would you charge them with $500 for violation? Now, I realize you might be able to, but have you ever done it? I realize they aren't in residential areas either, but the noise travels to residential areas. And you've had residents up here complaining, and you don't even send the police out to ask them to turn the music down when it's time. Now, I don't have a problem with anybody on the beach. I live nearby. I can hear it. Doesn't bother me. But still, the point is the enforcement and what you're now able to do to private citizens who are not even the ones causing the problem. If it's a guest, if it's a tourist, cite the person making the problem. They're adults. You know, I'm not responsible for them as a child. All right. In regards to the contact information, I understand the city wants a point person they can contact for these properties, but you need to be responsible and respectful with that information. In a previous meeting, one of our neighbors a few streets over insisted that you make all of our contact information public so she could call property owners rather than the police over noise violations. And like I said, I've never had a problem with any noise on my street or in my house. But I still don't want my information to be published, and I shouldn't have to give up my privacy and subject myself to disgruntled people's complaints from all over town 24/7. Now, I don't disagree that guests should have access to their host 24/7, but that's different from the city having access 24/7. Hosts and guests are rated on their response times on Airbnb and VRBO, and I think the review system ensures that everyone is respectful of each other. Now, that being said, the city can limit their contact to business hours. There's absolutely no reason the city should need to contact a property owner 24/7 and expect a response within 30 minutes. I just think that's absurd. Now, maybe a guest is doing something illegal and even destroying the property, but in that case, the guest still has tenant's rights, no matter how temporary or short term. And the property owner can't just throw them out. The police can arrest them for violating the law, but the property owner can't legally even enter the premises while it's being rented out without the consent of the guest. So, yeah, I think you should be able to collect contact information, but you shouldn't require that we be at your beck and call 24/7 or punish us with heavy fines and misdemeanors. Okay, I'm almost done. But
You're not fine.
parking is a problem. Well, I'm sorry, if parking is a problem somewhere in the city, then you need to address it on a case-by-case basis. It's obviously discriminatory against tourists to say that tourists can't use street parking even if they're parked legally. And that came up before, and it got shut down. But I think most people here understood that you can't just say because someone's renting out a property that they can't park on the street. So, yeah, you need to address that case by case. I'd also like to point out that when we have guests come in town, even if we have 6 people 6 adults, they come in one vehicle. And think about it, if you go out of town with a group of people, you go together, you might rent a vehicle, you go together. So is parking even a problem from short-term rentals? I doubt it. But the thing is, who could say, because no research has been done on this. Short-term rentals are just being demonized. And I think that's clear. And this is a good example of how this ordinance is kind of discriminatory and unenforceable in a lot of ways. And that's what I think the problem is, that the city council hasn't done any actual research. And we don't know the impact that it's going to have on the city with this ordinance. We didn't hold any workshops. We didn't reach out to the community for input. And as a result, we've got a document that is rife with potential for abuse and totally unenforceable and extremely redundant. Now, there's already a pending lawsuit, like I said, and I think we should repeal the ordinance until we have some actual data to support a need for the regulation. Then we should create an ordinance that meets that need. Now, I don't oppose an ordinance that will accomplish meaningful goals. However, I do oppose being demonized and charged with misdemeanors and exorbitant fees for infractions that I did not even commit. Now, Section 53-150B states that the owner is personally responsible for noncompliance with the law pertaining to the use of the unit, regardless of whether or not they committed the thing. It says regardless of whether it was committed by the owner, occupants, or even guests of the occupants. So you can't charge one person with a crime that they didn't commit. That's just another lawsuit waiting to happen. And I think we haven't looked into the fact that Airbnbs allow the city to accommodate thousands of additional tourists in times when the city is in flux, like during cruising and Crab Fest. And I doubt the council's even aware that over the last 6 years, just since we've been doing this, that there have been multiple occasions where we've gotten calls asking us to rent out additional rooms in our home because every room in the city is booked. Now, once we hit capacity, where do you think the tourists are going to go? They're either not going to come in town or they're going to go somewhere else. So in those times, we actually open up additional rooms to our home. And, you know, I mean, the city is able to accommodate because we're not the only ones doing that. However, we're not going to risk, you know, being charged with a misdemeanor and charged with a $500 fine just to rent out an extra few rooms a few times a year. So I think we've really jumped the gun with this ordinance, and we should just do away with the inspections altogether. You can have residents sign an affidavit saying they'll comply with local laws. I think there's no need to start a whole new bureaucracy with an inspector and a vehicle and all that stuff costing the city at $29 an hour. Just enforce the codes you already have on the books. And if you want to decrease the amount of Airbnbs in the city and tourists, then do that. But at least state what your goals are and do that. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, y'all.
Anybody got any questions?
So, first off, Mr. Delgado, thank you. I thought you brought up a lot of good points. Mayor, just an update. I know this was pushed out, the application. Where are we at just on the process? I mean, have we set a deadline? I don't see anything on the press release.
Right now, it's being appealed through, with Bob Warner has appealed this.
So we're not actively taking, because of the suit, we're not actively taking applications as it stands now.
No, they are.
We've
They are
gotten it.
taking applications right now,
Yeah, they mailed them out.
but
Is-
it's still under being appealed and all with Bob.
The ordinance is on your books. There is an appeal of the ordinance, but that does not affect the ordinance is on your books. And as far as I'm aware, people are applying. I don't know how many people has filled out applications and all of that, but people are applying and it is being enforced.
And do we have a deadline of compliance?
I
So
think
within
it
a
is.
year?
At the end of the year,
At the end of the year, you said? January 1. We don't have an estimate of how many have complied and actually,
We can find out.
and did we ever solidify?
They did send, the building department did send letters they got from coastal tourism on identifying like which properties have VRBOs, and they did send letters to them, they did do a press release,
Yeah, Jeremy.
and other, trying to push information out.
And as administrator, have you guys identified a mechanism of who will be inspecting or what that's falling under? I think that was up for discussion a couple months ago.
Probably still be under code enforcement as of now.
But we don't have an estimate of how many that we were looking at in terms of what's supplied thus far. And so we would match up what you had just mentioned, Mr. Russo, in terms of tourism doing a kind of an audit to show what the number is within the city. We don't know what that matches up and what I think is in the city and then what's actually has supplied yet though.
Whatever they've gotten from VRBO, from coastal tourism, I mean, they provided addresses.
75 people are completely registered.
75.
Okay. Would you like to address your husband?
Thank you, Meg.
Good evening. My name is Mario Delgado. I'm at 207 Union as well. First, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, Heather Smith, and others that were vital to drafting this ordinance. I know it's not easy. Like with all human things, this ordinance is not perfect. It will need some tweaks and adjustments. We all know that. For the last 6 years, like you know, my wife mentioned, we've been renting 2 rooms in our primary residence. That's where we live. We're not investors from out of town. We usually don't cause a problem in the city. We upkeep our home. Our neighborhood is mostly quiet, tranquil. You know, except for that dreaded train that passes 3 or 4 times a night. You know, that's the real noise complaint that we get from guests is that train. People like me, to people like me, this is not a business. This is a way for us to offset the cost of living in Bay St. Louis. Most people that rent out a spare bedroom, they don't do it because they want to. Trust me. If we had all the money in the world, we would not have renters in my house. In the last couple of years, wind and hail insurance has doubled, and the price for repairs is astronomical. We live in one of the oldest houses in Bay St. Louis, and it actually started its history as a boarding house in 1860. And we like to continue that tradition. You know, it's been going on for 164 years. But now we risk being charged with a misdemeanor and $500 fine every time a guest parks on the street, or if a guest makes too much noise and a neighbor or a passerby reports us to the city. You can't say it won't happen because that's what's being written to this ordinance. Who will take the misdemeanor? Yeah, my wife or me? You know, Section 53-150 says that the owner shall not be relieved from any personal responsibility or personal liability for what our guests do. And I feel like that's not right. You know, does the Pearl get fined when a drunken tourist fights inside their hotel? No. The drunken tourist is the one that gets the fine or the misdemeanor. And I don't want my phone number or email published publicly in the database where I may be harassed by other homeowners. Like my wife mentioned, someone several council meetings ago proposed that make that public. I just hope that never becomes public. If there are problems like noises, folks need to call 911 and make a report. And the offending party needs to pay the existing fine or the ordinance that they break. I'll double tap street parking again. You know, street parking should be legal to anyone, including family members from out of town and tourists that we host. If the city wants to restrict parking, I think they should make it as case by case, street by street. For the solution, right? I asked the city to make an amendment to the ordinance 669. Make folks like us either that rent out a spare bedroom either exempt from this excessive regulation, or probably most likely is either reduce the permit fee significantly, make it so that we can affirm compliance with a separate regulation like that affidavit with the golf cart permit. Doing so will reduce the costs of paying a city employee about $29 an hour benefits, and you know, the cost of having a big fancy truck and driving around the city inspecting people. You may argue it's about safety. I rest assured that Airbnb already requires smoke detectors in every room and every hallway. We already they require fire extinguishers, and we actually go above and beyond and include carbon monoxide detectors and water leak detectors. For trash, we live in this house, so trash is not a problem. We take it out. Again, we don't want to be fined if we forget to put the trash back out into our yard. We don't want to get fined. Occupancy, we've been following occupancy rules. Airbnb has strict guidelines on how many people you can host. For noise, we actually try our best to be quiet because we have small children, so we get hit on reviews anytime there's a lot of noise. So, closing remarks, I think the city should limit the amount of short-term rentals in the future with exemptions to people like us that host within our house, at our own house, like a mother-in-law suite. And that's all I have for y'all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the vacation ordinance, Mike, you said we already have a pending lawsuit.
As you guys know, you do not have a pending lawsuit, you have a pending appeal. We've talked about this when it happened. So they had to file within 10 days of you guys taking the action.
What's
And
the current status?
It's just kind of hanging out there right now.
Good evening. My name is Ann Wilson. I live at 217 Union Street in Bay St. Louis. And I do have a short-term rental on my property, a little standalone cottage behind the main house. It is documented through the tax assessor's office, and it is clearly listed on our property. My husband and I do the booking and the cleaning of the cottage, and we are there usually every day of the year. Every once in a while we go out of town and have a guest check themselves in, like it happened for Thanksgiving Day. But if anyone makes noise or are not following the rules that we have posted in our cottage, I'm the first one to know about it, because I normally get up between 2 and 3 every morning to start my work day. So, but I did review the ordinance. I do agree that it was not well publicized where we could have a workshop or input from the public. We are not ones that have multiple properties that we rent out, and we are not a citizen or resident of Bay St. Louis. Yes, I was aware of the appeal. It was filed on August 29th, and I thought this would be resolved or looked at by the governing body before we received our letter in the mail on October 31st, requesting that we fill out form and give our square footage and how many bedrooms we have, and also proof of ownership. So I guess I'll have to send in my deed to my home that I own to show that it's on my property, and a parking plan. So guests park behind our house on a very large, we're lucky enough to have a 0.6 acre lot with access in the front on Union Street and behind. But I agree with my neighbors that citizens can park on the street. People park on Union Street from time to time. They're not Airbnb guests. People park on other streets, Washington Street, because I have to weave in and out of parked cars on streets in Bay St. Louis. And so to single us out as short-term rental owners and that no one can park on the street, I think is a bit much. I know that the number of rentals have increased in Bay St. Louis. And I also read through the ordinance that the city may inspect the premises. It doesn't say shall, it says may. So I'm hearing there is as many as 500 rentals, short-term rentals in Bay St. Louis, and at $100 each, then it's $50,000 for the city. And I don't know that $50,000 is going to be used to enforce this ordinance. And when we talk about the noise ordinance, we see that's an ordinance that is not enforced uniformly across the board in Bay St. Louis. And it sort of catch-can, where people call into the police department and complain, and then sometimes it's enforced and sometimes it's not, and sometimes we have noise from the bars. past 10 o'clock at night. And so maybe we can have some enlightenment on the level of enforcement that we will see with this ordinance. Maybe it'll just be on the books to collect the fee, and we won't see any enforcement. Or maybe just a chosen few are enforced and it's not uniformly enforced. And that would be a problem. But I think if someone filed an appeal about this, that it's just sitting out there is not a good reason. It should be looked at, and it should be looked at this entire ordinance to see what is not justified, what is not workable, what is not enforceable, and let people have input, have it on the agenda, and have your citizens explain why it should be appealed or revised for a workable ordinance. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any comments they want to make? Okay, well, we'll take a look at it.
I mean, I think a lot of the points are very valid to look at.
Excuse me?
So I think a lot of the points they're making are valid points that we need to look at. And, you know, as we talked about when we decided to pass it, that this was a work in progress and something that would need to be tweaked and changed over time. So, you know, if we need to make changes, we can start doing it now.
So how much response have y'all had, Mike? Y'all,
Jeremy sent a text that said 75 applications, and he got 15 this week. So basically, end of the year is expected to be at like 150. So based on what he's seeing. Yeah, based on calls, that kind of thing.
any complaints?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay. We'll take a look at this more. I appreciate your comment. No, I mean, we don't know about them. Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna look at it closer, over the holidays.
But the deadline is December 31st for us to file our application. So I think extending the deadline until you can tweak this would be very beneficial.
Anybody want to extend the deadline? That sounds like a good idea. Gene?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I don't think you can just extend, was not prepared to have this ordinance with me today, so I don't have it. But didn't it become effective at the,
Then the deadline of us submitting an application.
Is it specified in the ordinance?
I
don't
can't,
think it is.
that's why I can't remember if the ordinance said it was effective at the end of this year. I don't have it with me to know. Sure. I mean, I can also tell you that you have 100 and something people that's already come in and paid their money and filled out their application, so would be very cautious at just holding off a deadline of something that you already have people that are following the ordinance.
Yeah, we do have a pending action on this that we haven't heard anything about, so, I mean, it might be all in vain.
I'm happy to talk about that with you in executive session as to why you haven't heard anything about it.
Okay, because it wasn't mentioned before when we was in executive session.
We were not in executive session to discuss,
Last week we were, last meeting.
to discuss Dale Partners and Associates versus or the City of Bay St. Louis versus Dale Partners and Associates. You can only talk about in executive session what you go into executive session to
I
talk about.
understand that, but you could also say, hey, would y'all like to talk about other items? But you don't say that.
Carrie, this is your meeting. I'm willing to talk to you about any topic you ever want to talk about. If you want to talk about it in executive session,
Yeah, we'll
we're
talk
welcome
about
to
it in
do that.
executive Session, let's do that.
Okay, that is.
Are you
per-
prepared to talk about it in executive session?
If you'd like to talk about it in executive session, Gary,
Sure, I
that is
will.
perfectly fine.
Yes.
Well, and I guess with the council again, and Gene, as you mentioned, going into this, in the ordinance, you have, you want to get feedback. And I do want to preface, Mr. Delgado, I agree with a lot of what comments that you mentioned. and some of the same concerns I had when this was brought up, which I did not support on the ordinance, but, I do think, what is the plan? What's the council's kind of goal in making amendments or having those discussions or getting this input and feedback from those that this does impact? I just don't want to keep pushing it off. We know this thing got pushed off for years. So, I do want to have some kind of tangible, deadline or just further discussion. I don't want to just kind of put it off. But, was there anything in mind? And this is to all the council. Is this, as we get these concerns, then we'll consider and then bring it up
And-
for discussion at the next meeting and have some workshop and input?
To answer Ms. Wilson's thing, we amended the agenda to add it today. We're really not prepared to vote on it, honestly. So, and we're not going to meet again until the first meeting in January. So, as it stands, you're going to probably have to comply like everybody else is. And but I do want to talk more about the pending cause against us. And you brought up some great points, and they do need to be addressed. And but we've talked about this thing for many years, and I think we were just like trying to get a starting point. Originally, they wanted a much higher registration fee to be paid yearly. I was against that. It's just another tax that gets added to you. So, but we do have to pay staff to, do inspections if we do. I have a business in Bay St. Louis, so my business does get inspected yearly, for fire extinguishers, exit signs, and whatnot. So
You don't get
looked as a
inspected?
business. Hmm?
I beg your difference on that. You don't get inspected.
No, he said he does get inspected.
I did get inspected.
Yeah. Okay. 'Cause last time you stated you didn't.
No,
year.
I got inspected this year.
You got inspected last year too.
Well, I don't know. I may or may not be there when they inspect, but they check the fire hydrants. The fire extinguishers, and they check exit lights, things like that.
Gary, let's put it on the agenda for next meeting and see if we can set a workshop maybe sometime in January.
Okay. Caitlin, can you put more discussion on this on the first meeting? Sorry.
Mr. Gatto has a question.
Someone has a question? Can you come up? I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure that, if we are compliant, that that's not held against us, because right now, these 75 people who are compliant, you're assuming that they're backing up this ordinance. That's not, just because they've agreed to follow the ordinance. We've got our paperwork ready to be filled out too, but we're not happy with it. We don't agree with the fines and the misdemeanors, and we're honestly not real sure what we're gonna do going forward with this, because in the past, we've done long-term rentals. We can just go back to that. We can go back to renting out 2 months at a time to government workers. They're not gonna be spending a lot of money downtown, but we're gonna make about the same, A lot of people are gonna do that.
I understand what you're
Nobody wants to be charged with a misdemeanor. That's something that you could do. You could either change that today, the misdemeanor and $500 fine. That's real bad.
That
y'all.
would be.
I'd just like to
that would
point
be
out,
up to the-
Megan, just to let you know, any violation of a city ordinance is a misdemeanor. So it's not just this one. Even if they took that language out of there, there's general language. If you violate an ordinance in the city of Bay St. Louis, it's a misdemeanor. Yes.
What if someone else
Or
does?
depending on what the ordinance is and how it's written.
What
But if it's an ordinance, it depends on how it's written and whose the responsibility is. But someone can be held responsible for a misdemeanor.
Right, so if you're saying at my
I'm
house.
not getting into a argument with the
Okay.
constituent. I'm just pointing out
No,
to
no,
you,
no,
for
I'm
you
just
guys to
saying-
know
I'm just saying
that
that
all
any-
Problem is
ordinances
that-
are a misdemeanor.
In any
Where-
enforcement, hold on.
Who's charged
Any
with it?
enforcement is on the administrative side. So, that. Mike, what's your opinion on it?
Well, I think,
I guess what she's asking, if they don't have their paperwork put in by the 31st.
Actually, I can't, I've got to legally tell him not to answer that. We have an outstanding ordinance, and what you're asking is, and then there is an appeal on it, and then to ask whether or not the ordinance is going to be enforced. I can't recommend that go further.
So we wouldn't be enforcing something that's under appeal, correct?
it is an active, it is a Bay St. Louis City ordinance.
So when I'm asking,
I stand by the ordinance. Yes, it is an active,
But you
there is
had
no
it
stay on the
be-
ordinance. It does not matter.
okay,
There's not a stay on the ordinance. So your ordinance is still on the books. So yes,
Understand that.
there is one singular person that is appealing this ordinance. At this time, your time period for appeal of that ordinance has passed. I will tell you, if you take any action on this ordinance, it would then open that back up, for whatever action that you do take for more appeals. But yes, there's an appeal by one individual.
All right, I just want to say one more thing, and I'm going to stop. Okay. The problem isn't just being charged with a misdemeanor. It's being charging the wrong person with the misdemeanor. Is that clear? If I'm renting out a property and someone else has a noise violation, someone else is throwing a party, I may not even be there. The cops can address that. Cite the person doing the thing. Don't cite me. You see the problem? Does that make sense?
yes, it does.
Yeah, that's all I gotta say.
But like I said, we're gonna set this for further discussion. Thanks.
Right.
Moving, no further guests, planning and zoning,
Minutes pool first, okay?
Mhm.
Minutes pool.
oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Sorry, daughter. Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Hoffman,
Second.
second by Councilman Lewis. Any discussion? Vote the motion.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries 6-0. Planning and zoning. Motion to follow planning and zoning's recommendation and approve the application for variance to the zoning ordinance submitted by Suzanne Dardo, requesting a variance of 1 foot 3 inches to the fence height requirement for a constructed 7 foot 3 inch privacy fence along the rear of the property line at 102 McCall Street, parcel 137R-0-44-015.000. Plan and zoning recommends approval 3-1. Any discussion?
Just points of clarification. So the fence is already constructed, and this is, and of course, some of the administration recommendation, I think does deny, but the fence is already constructed, correct? But it's a smaller section of the fence, correct? I mean, it's not.
Yeah,
entirely-
I think what it was, they, put it up without a permit
Yeah.
and got called in or something, and
Mhm.
it's, above the 6 foot requirement allowed in
And
residential
it's
areas.
on the further, it's not on
It's on the
front,
property line, the back,
but it's more on the back end where it's not really seen or
Yeah.
visible.
and again, going on with what's been approved and disapproved with higher than 6 foot fences in residential areas, that's our recommendation.
I'm sorry.
That's why our recommendation was to deny because of what's been allowed in the past, with 8 foot fences or higher than 6 foot.
Okay. There was someone wanting to speak on that? Would you stand up and state your name, please?
My name is Suzanne Dardo, and my husband is Bruce DeMars, and we live at.
I pronounced your name right.
Yes, sir, you did.
Okay, thank you.
And, yeah, you got the first and the last. So. We live at 102 McCall, and we've been there about 5 years full-time. I was part-time before that. And the backstory on this, we didn't set out to blatantly, go in against the ordinance. We worked with, before we even got the contractor, we called the neighbors behind us. We, kind of known them. They're bought an older house and have been fixing it, and they are weekenders. So they came over. We talked to them about what we intended to do, and they were in full support. We showed them pictures. They were in absolute support of what we intended. Then we contacted a contractor, and we asked several times if there was a violation in height, and he informed us that as long as the two parties were in agreement, that there wasn't a problem. So, and we kind of went with that. So it is higher than the ordinance allows, directly behind our house, adjacent to the neighbors. It makes the ordinance as far as the street, you know, it tapers down and there's no obstructions.
I saw the fence, it's decorative.
Yeah, so the only people that really are affected by the increased height are us and the adjacent.
And that adjacent property owner is the one that did give the level of support, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, I think they intend, not at the 8 foot, but they intend to extend it 6 feet. Because we just took it to the middle of our property. We have the 3 lots. 1 lot.
I'm gonna look at this letter real quick.
Oh, okay, yeah, the back letter is from the adjacent property owner, our neighbor, and I just rewrote it because I didn't get the original and I couldn't expand the font, so I just rewrote what he said. And then the top letter is from the contractor, and he was gonna attend the meeting and couldn't. Of course, he had another job out of town, but he basically is saying that he didn't. What he
Did anybody go look at the fence? I went, looked at it, and it's very decorative in nature. It is on the further, where it's showing, it's right out to the front. And it doesn't obstruct anybody's view from what I could see, but there is a letter of opposition on it. And I know it was read, whatever, on planning and zoning. But, now y'all pulled the permit? Y'all pulled the permit? Can you come back up?
I'm sorry, I still didn't understand.
Y'all pulled the permit to build the fence in the first place?
We did not. Again, we questioned the contractor and were told that we didn't need a permit. Or I assume, that part I'm not real clear at. We did not get the permit. I assumed he did or whatever. One day the inspector from the city showed up and he asked us if we had a permit. And I saw the guy that was working for my contractor jump in his truck and take
Well,
So,
you're gonna
yeah,
have to.
so
pull
we
it.
did not, that we
he
didn't
come
get the
back?
permit, we were shut down, and then, I think it was a Friday, and he went and got it Monday.
Mike, did they pull the permit?
They did
They
get
came
one
and
Yeah.
got them after.
Okay.
after, yeah.
They had to pay the double fee? Okay, that's
So,
all I had.
yeah. But, and again, not, like, it wasn't blatant on our part, we assumed he had got it. We worked with contractors before, not this particular one, and they all said,
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any discussion? Recommend approve, plan and zoning's recommendation. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to follow planning and zoning's recommendation and approve.
Motion to approve by Councilman Lewis. Anybody second?
Second.
Second by Councilman DeSalvo. Any discussion? Vote the motion.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 6-0. You're fine. Let's see, next item. Motion to follow planning and zoning's recommendation and approve the application for variance submitted by Archie and Carolyn Melcher, requesting a variance of 2 feet, resulting in a 10-foot setback to the corner side yard at 1198 North Beach Boulevard, parcel number 144 L Lincoln -0-19-040.000. It was approved 4-0. Anybody got any discussion? I'm entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to follow planning and zoning's recommendation of approval.
We have a motion to follow planning and zoning's recommendation. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilman DeSalvo. Any discussion? Vote the motion.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries 6-0. Number 8, motion to follow planning and zoning's recommendation and approve the application for variance submitted by Stephen Bolin and Rachel O'Keefe, requesting a variance of 6 foot 2 inch, resulting in 18 foot 10 inch front yard setback, and a 2 foot variance, resulting in an 18 foot rear yard setback for construction of a dwelling at 218 Washington Street, parcel number 149M-2-30-130.00. Planning and zoning recommended approved 4-0. I'm a relinquish to, no, I'm just getting laryngitis. If you can carry.
Yeah. So, and just to preface on this one, it's the hardship is that there's 2 live oaks, correct?
Yes.
That if they were to
It's a landlocked,
yeah.
parcel of property. If he faced it towards the beach, it would be less room on the house and would have to remove an oak tree. If he faces towards Washington Street, it allows more room in between the residents and everything, and no need to move oak trees on it.
Any other discussion amongst the council? All right. It's a pleasure of the council on this one.
Make a motion to follow P and Z's recommendation and approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman DeSalvo, second by Councilman Hoffman. Vote the motion.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Next item up, motion to follow planning and zoning's recommendation and approve the application for sketch plat approval submitted by PPM Development for the Paradise Estates subdivision located at 13131 Highway 603 at the northwest corner of I-10 West and Highway 603, parcels 133-0-7-006.00, 133-0-07-004.002, and 133Q-0-08-002.00, 133Q-0-08-002.002, and 133Q-0-08-002.001. This was approved 4-0 at Planning and Zoning. Any discussion amongst the council?
No, this is subdivision to make a few new parcels of property right along the I-10-603 corridor, right around that 3-story building. So maybe the smaller parcels will attract some development on those properties, so.
And then Josh, is that zone, that's zone commercial right there?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I'll make a motion to follow P and Z's recommendation and approve.
A motion by Councilman DeSalvo.
Second.
Second by Councilman Hoffman. Any discussion? Vote the motion.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 6-0. All right. And that wraps up the planning and zoning portion. And just a quick question, maybe Mayor, one of the administration. So on the P and Z, there was an applicant, but it was a preliminary plat, so that doesn't need to come to the city council for final approval? Is that correct? It was a,
On the property,
yeah, it's over by, on the beach. Right? Wasn't there a preliminary plat approval, or am I mistaken?
for, the condo,
Or no, I'm sorry, it was a, or was it a minor site plan, right?
yes. Site plan,
So that doesn't come to the council for final approval?
nope.
Going off the
It-
top of my head, but I think there's a square footage requirement, might be 5,000 square feet. If it's under that, it doesn't. I'd have to go pull my book's not here.
And so is that part of the new subdivision ordinance where, because it went to planning and zoning recommending body, and that was the opportunity for public discussion or public input, correct? So it wouldn't have to come to us for final vote though.
Correct.
Not if it's what I'm thinking it is.
Has that changed? Is that a change? Has that always been in place?
I think it is.
Minor site plan, the 5,000 has never had to come
No.
before, but
Okay,
I'm not
so-
sure what, I don't know.
That's,
if
it's always been like that.
Okay, so it's a square, it's based on the square footage. If it doesn't meet that, then it goes to planning and zoning, then
And
from there it goes
meets
to.
all the requirements and everything, you know.
Would it come,
parking and everything.
would it come back to us for the majors? I mean, or would it come back in the final stages or not? Or it's just, at that point, it just is all administrative review then, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I just needed clarification on that. I just can't recall if those did or didn't. Okay. All right. Next up is the mayor's report.
The only thing we had, got a couple things with Jason and all, but, you know, we had talked about getting a new water tower and everything. Also upsizing our water lines in some areas that need some upgrading and all. Found out this past week that, we've been approved for $500,000. It's about a $5 million job or more, project. We've only been awarded $500,000 forgivable in that loan. So we'll stay on the books and we'll go back next year and look at it again and reapply. Probably divide these two projects, one of them funded or something. You know, one thing we need to discuss, you know, on this is the water tower. Of course, that's very important as well. But we also have access to water supply in case of an emergency through the county, or is upsizing our water lines in some areas more important. So when we get close, we'll go into discussion about that and see, you know, which one we want to do. And again, we can put in for both of them again and keep the projects separate, see what the funding is in, and see if we can maybe get some forgivable loans on those.
It's a good update. All right.
And again, this was 5.429 million. It was two projects. Because they were put up, two applications that y'all approved and said we can submit, they've combined them because they were the same year, which made it much bigger. The priority of a water well, which we got 100% forgiven, thanks to Doug, that's a higher priority in the state when they look at these compared to a new storage tank, or even upsizing lines. So the priority, they were like, the max is 500,000 on any project, or 25%, whichever's the highest. Well, up to 500,000. But again, we're declining it. We did submit an application. I don't know if formally if the council should take a vote and just say, hey, formally decline it. Probably wouldn't hurt to have on the books, but I mean, I don't think anybody wants to have $5 million in the books right now on a loan. So
That you have to pay back.
but you got to pay back. Well, and again, when we submitted, we said, let's see if we can get the 100% forgiven again because of our demographics and things like that, like we did for the water well. But the response was not as favorable as we were
What's the
hoping.
condition of our existing wells? Our existing wells are still good, I mean, water
Yes.
towers.
Yes, yeah, this was just for more capacity and everything. Like I say, in case, you know, we did get into an emergency, you know, we got a tank and everything with the county right there on Longfellow, along with a valve right there on Washington Street that can be opened in case of any type of emergency and all.
From the county.
From the utility authority, yes.
We did get 500,000 awarded, you said, is that correct?
They would forgive
Up-
500,000
They would forgive 500,000.
on the 4.9 million. So you'd need to go borrow 2 million even to do your small project in order to get the whole 500,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, now.
But again, I don't know if we should formally have a motion of, you know, motion to decline the
recommend.
DWSIR LF loan in the amount of 5.4 million.
I'll make that motion.
Just so it's on the books, that say we applied and we declined it because it's not what we want.
Okay, do you want to repeat that motion, Councilman DeSalvo?
Do you want me to read it, Howard? I mean,
Yes, please.
motion to decline DWSIR LF loan offer for the Mississippi Department of Health in the amount of $5,429,250.
So we had a motion on the floor
Motion,
by
yes.
Councilman DeSalvo, second by Councilman Knobloch. Any discussion with the motion?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. All right. Mayor, is that all we had on?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right. Next item up is the council business. This is discussion around the professional services contract for grass cutting at the sports complexes between B&H Lawn and the City of Bay St. Louis. This is up for a motion tonight.
So Doug asked if, Doug was on the winning side of that vote and asked for reconsideration.
Yeah, it's got a better detailed report, quite honestly, and it does help to keep the grass cut down, helps with the root system. They delineated twice a year fertilization, as well as ryegrass, 40 bags of ryegrass, which is about right. I've got to lay out for the fields, but it does help to keep the grass cut, so it toughens the roots up, so it makes a better playing surface. So still, yeah.
So would we, so, and this was, based on the threshold, it's under putting that formally, but was it advertised, or how did we go about getting the quotes?
They gave basically
We
a
had
scope
three-
of work and got 3 quotes.
We had 3 quotes.
You've got 3 quotes, I
Yeah,
guess.
that
And this is the most
that were
competitive.
provided. Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so how would that work? So if we're putting that out for request for all of the grass cutting services, I think this was included as we left it in the last meeting. Would we?
That is correct. It's in the current scope
the
of
current-
work.
In the
What I would have to
current
do, tomorrow, I would do an addendum
Good.
to our RFP that's with Plan House and remove those 2 line items out of the services. That way bidders would know that's not part of their package.
And it was never, and it wasn't one where it was you can do one or the other, right? So this was just was quotes were gained on this one, but it wasn't ever published in congruence with the other requests that we put out there. This was
Specific.
specific. Okay.
It wasn't part of the big package.
Yeah, we didn't put 2
Now
different
it
bids
is.
out there. One you could do on the citywide,
No,
or you
no,
can do on the
No,
statewide.
no,
We
we,
didn't.
we put everything
It's just
together
everything
like
together and have line
their
items.
request was.
Kind of how it was before. I mean, their current grass cutters doing the soccer fields and baseball fields. Did increase the number of cuts too.
38 from
38.
22, I think it was.
Yes.
And this
But
current,
I would do an addendum, just the process, if y'all approve this, tomorrow I would do an addendum to our current RFP with Plan House that would remove those 2 line items.
and the current contractor already has is already doing some of those fields as it stands, or at least one of the soccer fields, right?
Mhm.
It's just, so
Doing both of 'em.
familiarity there, correct?
Correct.
Cuts
Correct.
them.
And
They're cutting it current.
he's helped us on the complex as well, the city complex over there. He's helped us some on that. They did some work. I guess it would be the field one there a couple years ago when they worked on Bay High's field. Took the some side off of that, and planted it out there by us and all. So he's very familiar with both of the complexes and all.
And it'd just be a matter of if there is some, because I think in the proposal or the scope there was some fertilizing, but then if there's ever a need to where they line fields, as long as we provide the supplies, they'll have the labor basically to assist with our rec director. And
No, that was not, I mean, that was in there, but it was not that was a alternate.
Correct.
That's
That's
what we are
not
not-
in
Yeah,
the
it's
contract.
no, it's
Yeah,
not
we're
concluded,
not
but
No,
there.
at a
it-
yeah,
yes.
at a
Yeah.
Yeah, if we ran into
We're
some
not-
problems, something, and all, we could negotiate with them for that, to, come in and do some other things, but
And an additional cost.
correct.
That'd
Yeah,
be
it is.
negotiated.
That
No,
puts another,
was the-
that's not part of
puts
the
another
cost.
$30,000 on the,
Yeah.
about $29,000 if you
Yeah.
look at the season and, the lining process.
yeah.
So that's not cost effective.
No.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I think this was more breaking it out to try to get somebody specialized to keep the
Mhm.
fields better with the Parks and Rec director and keep them in better shape than past, and probably give some of the volunteers a little relief too, that volunteer and do stuff, so I think
Sure.
it'd be good.
All right.
Motion.
So-
Second.
Sorry, was
So-
that a motion, Councilman Smith? Okay.
So you want to approve the
B&H.
previous one?
B&H, the submitted proposal that's submitted today in a package, I want to approve that one.
All right, so we have a motion.
More clearly delineated what they're doing.
The updated.
Yeah, updated one.
All right, so we have Councilman Seal has a motion to approve the professional services contract for grass cutting in the sports complexes between B&H Lawn and the city of Bay St. Louis. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman DeSalvo. Any discussion? Is that the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
That wasn't aye, right?
Yeah.
All right, up next is public forum. Have anybody signed up yet?
New business, old business.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my apologies. Sorry. Councilman Hoffman, any council business? Should we have new business?
No, not this time.
Councilman
good.
DeSalvo?
Mike, have y'all had any reports of the police station leaking water?
Leaking,
The roof leaking?
we did when we had a bad rain of, it's been a couple months now, I think, was it? Yeah. I I think we got that fixed. We had condensation with the air conditioned vents. I think we've gotten that taken care of, but yes.
Okay, I just was receiving a couple,
One was the siding, huh?
some complaints that, the police station was leaking water during rainy times, and
Lately?
they had a smell of like mold or something in the police department. Did y'all get any calls on that?
Not lately. This was, I guess, a couple months
A couple of
ago.
months ago, we had a very
Yeah,
heavy
back in
rain.
the summer when we had a bad rain, came in on that front wall through the flashing and everything, leaking in that front wall. Detective's room in there had some problems in there, condensation and everything, but I think that's all been addressed.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else, Councilman Alba?
Oh,
Anything else?
no,
Ms. Davis, anything?
For Lazard's time.
New business, yeah.
The, only thing I have is that I have a resident, and I wasn't sure exactly how to advise them, requesting a street light by their house.
Send the address and all, to go look at it and see, get with Coast Electric and see if, they'll take care of it.
Councilman Seal?
You send that in to Kim or send it to me or whomever.
All right, that's it. So that rounds up the council business. Up next is public forum. I think a few of these folks have already spoken. Ms. Ann Wilson, Ms. Megan Delgado, Mr. Mario Delgado, Ms. Suzanne Dardo. Ms. Anita Warner, you signed up? Yes, ma'am. And your topic is the tree ordinance.
Right. Last June, we talked about the tree ordinance. We looked at the draft. Then it wasn't finished. I was back in October asking what was going on with the tree ordinance, and I was told it was being worked on. It's now December. What's happening with the tree ordinance?
It's on me. There's just been,
Yeah.
quite frankly, there's a lot going on, a lot of ordinance, a lot of action in the city. And quite frankly, going and doing a deep dive into our tree ordinance as it's currently written, there is actually a lot of mechanisms that we can use as a city. So the building department has actually been utilizing those ordinances to make people have a plan and submit a plan and telling people no, and using the tools that are available to us currently. That's actually, there's some, you're
Some
probably
language
more
in there that
familiar.
they can use
Yes.
currently.
Yes, and so they have been utilizing that language when developers come in asking, and they're saying if they do want to cut down a tree or whatever, or if they're developing, whatever the case may be, they're having to submit the tree plans and work to get, I guess it would be technically mitigation. So our ordinance is actually in pretty solid shape. There's a couple of tweaks that we will eventually get around to making that are more minor tweaks, but we actually have a pretty good
So who's
implementation.
who's charged with enforcing that and reviewing that? Is that Ricky? Who's that?
Yes.
The building department, and I think he works with John Adams,
John
right?
Adams
Okay.
also comes out and looks at the trees if there's
Okay.
a problem, if something's wrong with it, he'll
Understand.
look at that and everything, but in general, Shieldsboro, they came through and looked at, with their subdivision and all wanting to cut, I don't know,
6 or
10,
7.
7, 8 trees out. I think got with John and all, there's one little one in the middle of a lot that's pretty bad shape, so that's the recommendation is for that one, and then they'll mitigate it out for that chart we had, using that as how many trees they'd have to replace it
Well,
with.
and it's not just mitigation too, it's also
Yeah.
saying, no,
No.
you're not cutting a
Yeah.
tree.
Because
can-
it's not a
can-
hardship, we don't,
Yes.
you gotta prove your hardship, and just because you drew the lot lines here instead of,
Understand that.
or
Just
you
'cause you
want this
created
big
your
of
own
a
hardship.
house, redesign your house and go on the lot now.
Okay,
Yeah.
my other question is, with respect to developers and development, and I know we're dealing with the consultants on revising the whole code, are we gonna do anything about requiring these people to plant trees? Because what they wanna do is clear cut the lot, build the house, walk away, leave it to the homeowner.
That would be different.
I know it's different.
Yes,
That's
and,
what
and,
I'm
I, and I
asking.
think that's good, to
I'm-
come up with something added to our ordinances to where, you can't have them cleared, without
Well,
replant.
and there are, literally, there are trash trees.
Yeah,
You don't want a hackberry tree.
Yeah.
There are trash trees out there that we don't want. But it seems to me that when people are developing a subdivision and they're taking some things out, they could easily put in new trees. And every place else that I have lived, like in Dallas, if you're building, they require you to put in trees.
So more.
A
of a-
certain
doesn't
amount of
have to be a
certain
live
amount
oak.
of canopy coverage, I think is the term
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
usually
Yeah, and
use.
it doesn't have to be a live oak, because a live oak is not appropriate for small lots. But there are a lot of other trees that you could do. You can even do crepe myrtles, because they grow fast and they give you color and they feed the birds and the bees all summer. So,
It's more of like a landscaping
yeah,
beautification.
something,
Yeah.
something. I mean, it's just, I hate it when I see them, they clear cut, they build, they leave, and then you're lucky if you get like one little bitty tree.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's my issue. Thank you, y'all.
Well, and just one quick question to follow up. So I know the nature of us wanting to put more teeth, but you mentioned, we're using that chart that was presented? Are we using that now? Or if you're cutting something down, you've got to replace it with X amount? I know there was there's many different factors based on the size of that
Yes.
tree.
By
So-
the circumference of the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Some of
we're
their
using-
general
And
standards.
look,
It's not
you know, we've had,
specified
yeah, we-
necessarily what they have to do, but the building department they have
and
their
people's been
standards
good,
just
the
to
ones
keep
that's
it the
had to
same.
move it, we've had to remove two because of foundations on a house, and one of them pretty much knocking the house off the blocks and everything,
Yeah,
but,
that's understandable.
but they did, they came in and I think it's 6, 8, 45-gallon trees they gotta replace them with, and, they've been working with Ricky and them in the building department down there, and hadn't had a problem with anything.
So
And
we're able to
we've-
do that with the current ordinance, not with even with the new, right?
Yeah, just,
Yes.
yes.
And we've also worked with our court department and had some conversations with them. And so if somebody illegally cuts a tree, the judge has full discretion to, there's a lot that the judge can do, actually much more than even we can do.
Mhm.
So we've had open conversations with the judge too. So I would foresee if people start cutting trees, you're probably gonna see him be a lot more stringent on that.
Yeah, and, we ran in that incident out there on the highway there. I guess
Mhm.
a year
The
or so
palm
ago.
tree, or cut down the oaks and put in those
So
damn
some-
palm trees.
But we got our oak
Yeah.
trees
Which are not
back and
native.
some extras too, so.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Appreciate it.
Mr. Warner. All right, we've
Yeah, I
had.
guess
Oh,
that's
sorry.
one thing concerning too sometimes, like the ones in the middle of the highway. What's the highway gonna do in 50 years when them things fully root? You have to redo the highway probably. 'Cause roots do a lot of damage to foundations, infrastructure. They're beautiful, but planted in the wrong spot could.
Well,
cause lots
I
of
think when a
money.
lot of these was planted around town, you saw where a lot of them was removed in some area because they was planted dead underneath the power lines. I think Albany was one of the streets around by Mississippi Power and all. They came in and planted them all down, but they were dead underneath the power lines and had to be removed, before they even got big. So, that's one of the things you need to be cautious of when we do plant them and everything, is where we're planting them and everything. We've been trying to do the parks in some different places. The depot, I think we probably got about 15 new ones back there and that. Still want to put some McDonald Field, I think, some of the other parks they're looking at trying to replace them. And just around town in general, wherever we see on, city property that may need them.
Looking good though.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. We have Mr. John Oman discussing topic matter vacation rentals. Did you still? Wait till January? All right. We'll be here soon. All right. That wraps up the public forum, or everyone that signed up. Is there anybody here that doesn't want to speak that wasn't able to sign up? All right. Next is a project update and our engineers report. Mr. Kenichi.
Good evening. We have two motions tonight for some new projects that we recently received bids on. The first one is for the new water well, Thompson Brothers Drilling. They submitted a bid. And you should have that in your package as well. I think we had two bids on that project. So we are recommending the award of that to Thompson. We had several alternates in that project too. Everything came in under our estimate and within the forgivable loan amount. So we are recommending the three alternates. Alternate one is the site work. Well, the base bid is just for the well. The 1,200-foot deep well is 1,500 gallons per minute, 16-inch casing. So that's in the base bid. And then the alternate one is the site work, the piping. So there's about 400 or 500 feet of 10-inch pipe that we have to install to tie in the new well to the existing water system right at Booker Street. and some site work, limestone fencing, things like that. So that's alternate 2. Alternate 3, that's alternate 1. Alternate 2 is, let me see, a generator. So a generator for the well, which is recommended by the Department of Health. That's $38,000. And then alternate number 3 is the rehab of the Harry Street well. So what's happening out there is the casing is leaking, so we're losing a lot of water. So we want to come in and regrout and pour concrete around that casing to seal it up. So all those were written into the original loan agreement, and all have been approved by the Department of Health. So we're recommending the award of all 3 of those alternates. So the total amount is, looks like it's 2,194,463, and that'll be to Thompson Drilling.
And Caitlin, can we put that bid amount in that motion when you finalize the minutes, please?
Any
Yeah,
discussion?
this is funded by that forgivable loan.
Yeah.
Mississippi Department of
Yeah,
Health.
this is the one that
Who has to
brought
provide the
attention.
funding?
Huh?
Who provides the funding to get this paid?
It's reimbursable, just like all the other grants.
So we have to front the
Right.
money.
And it's about a 30-day turnaround for them.
Yeah, this isn't.
The difference here
This
is
is
FEMA's
quick.
not involved, so it's not,
Yeah.
you don't have to wait to the end of the project. This
We'll
is you
be
submit
submitting
and,
monthly.
and come back, and so you're not having to front millions of dollars.
So, Jason, also just comment on the timeline, and, you know, the number of these projects that are happening, the number of contractors. So in this bid, kind of, we put, in order to get bids, we put a pretty
Yeah, so it's,
good span.
the well drillers in Mississippi are very busy right now. There's about 80 wells that are being drilled throughout the state. A lot of it's the ARPA money that's come down. So we have about 18 months on this project just to get them enough time to schedule it. The actual work is only a few months once they can get it scheduled and get it in. So even though we approve it tonight, we may have some pay applications as they start doing some of their shop drawings and some of their submittals. But it'll probably be at least, I would say, 6 to 9 months before we see any work on the site.
When those invoices will come in stages, phases.
Right.
Okay. All right. Further discussion? So, want to entertain a motion, we want to include, did you guys get that total amount to include in that?
Yes, I got it.
Okay.
Doug, it's your thing. You wanna make a motion?
Motion.
That's all we
Excited.
want.
We have a,
That's good, buddy.
yeah, we have a motion by Councilman Seal,
Second.
second by Councilman DeSalvo. Any discussion about the motion?
Aye.
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 Motion carries.
Cal, I would
6-0.
just comment again on
Thank you.
for Doug, by being at the MML meeting at
That's,
2 summers ago, a comment made by somebody where he picked up that nugget information and said, hey, can y'all check on this? And it was like, boom. So
Yeah.
that's how we got it. So again, MMO meetings
huge credit.
do some good
for
stuff.
that, yeah.
That was the one in Diamond Head.
No, that was
Huh?
Biloxi. I want to say,
Yeah,
right,
they did have that one.
the June summer meeting.
Yeah.
Is when that was.
Caitlin, you got the total amounts on that to reflect the, okay. All right. Let's see, we have one more, Jason?
Yeah, one more motion. So this is for the Phase 2 ARPA project. So we've already looked at all the sewer lines and manholes throughout the city. We've cleaned them, TV'd them, we've inspected them. So now this is Phase 2 where we're gonna go in and line all of the non-PVC sewer lines and all the brick manholes. So this was a project that we received bids on December 10th. We had 2 bids on this one. We have 4 bids on this one.
4.
So we're recommending award of the base bid, which is the point repairs and the lining of all the lines, and then also the additive alternate, which is to line all the manholes. We did come in under our estimate, so we do have some flexibility to actually extend this project and add more manholes, add more lines, things like that. It's a unit price contract. So we do look to probably do a couple of change orders on this one just to add some additional footage.
And again, the change orders on that, the way this was bid was specifically so that if it came in under budget, you could add more to the project. So it's all based off of estimates and quantities.
Yeah, if you remember, we thought we needed another $4 million to do the whole city.
Right.
We may come close to doing most of it.
Cool.
Yeah, this might finish it out.
And that totals, that's the 3,058,457.
That's right.
Okay.
So we'd like a motion to award the VLD services for $3,058,447.
Motion.
All right, a motion by Councilman DeSalvo.
Yep.
Second.
That was Hoffman,
Oh, I'm
so-
sorry. I apologize. That was Councilman Hoffman that made the motion. You had the second, Councilman Knobloch? Councilman Knobloch is the second. Any discussion with the motion?
Right.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries 6-0.
All right, thank you for those two. We'll get all the paperwork and everything ready for that.
When do you think this will start?
I'll have to get the contractor and see. They were just awarded another contract, similar type work, but smaller in Waveland. So it's really gonna be beneficial for them to have both projects going. But we'll have construction conferences with them and find out notice to proceed and all that in the first year.
Do we have some areas, Jason, identifying where we're starting? I know Valentine would like to get that.
Start on Valentine,
Valentine,
yeah.
St.
Yeah.
George.
Yeah,
Yeah,
We
okay.
highlighted that one.
Yeah.
yeah. Those are two areas that we wanna
It's
start.
part of this.
Right.
And those are probably some of the main, more concerning issues we've got on it, or I mean, those two.
Yeah, we didn't really see, I mean, we had 184 or 5 point repairs that we evaluated once we scoped everything. Some of those we didn't feel they were severe enough to spend money to repair. What we were really looking for is before you line the pipe, if you have a joint that's offset too much, you gotta fix that. The pipeline will be able to go through. So that's really what we were looking at. We have some, utility lines that were drilled through pipes that we need to go in and fix, and just some taps that are broken, things like that. But probably the St. George area and then Valentine are the two worst ones that we saw.
Okay.
So we'll be able to direct the contractor to work with.
All right, sounds good. All right, thank you, Jason.
Yes, that's all we had, unless you have any other questions about any other project.
Sienna?
Sienna, we're working on substantial completion with that one. We did have one homeowner that did not sign a right of entry, so we may have to come back and work on that at some point. We are working with the city staff on trying to get a permit modification so we can go in and clean out some material further upstream or downstream of where we were working. So we're gonna close it out right now with the contractor, and then we did come in under budget on that one, so we still have some money that we can go back out. We have to rebid a certain section, continue cleaning that out, but we need to work on getting that permit modification.
It's flowing good.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that they did looked really good. It's just, we couldn't get that one homeowner to sign the right of entry, so it's kind of a bottleneck right there in that area until we clean out some of the rest of it. Then I think it'll start flowing.
So that stuff good flow out through Watts Bayou?
Yeah, we
Like
want to look
the
at trying to
permit
continue going all the way out through there. And we've looked at, we actually talked to this contractor about extending it. They gave us a very high price to rent a marsh buggy to go through there. So we worked with Ronnie to find two companies that we could rent one from internally with the city and go in and clean all that out. So, I mean, it's much more cost effective to do that. So,
Right. Cool.
I don't know the availability of that equipment just yet, but that's kind of what we're looking at too.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Kenichi? All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Y'all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Russo, City Clerk's report.
Just a motion to approve docket of claims 24-060 dated December 17, 2024, in the amount of $375,782.17.
You get them emails I sent?
I did not.
I didn't send them.
Yeah, I was about to say, I didn't get any questions on the docket. You just
It wasn't
scared me,
any.
thanks.
It wasn't any. Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilman Seal, a second.
Second.
Second by Councilman Knobloch. Discussion with the motion.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 6-0.
Second is just a motion to approve docket of claims 24-061 special in the amount of $550 dated December 17, 2024.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Seal,
Second.
second by Councilman DeSalvo. Discussion with the motion.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 6-0. And then discussion consideration of the abolition of the city election commission.
So I sent this out to y'all today, probably around noon or so, maybe a little bit earlier. Again, I always apologize for the last minute. I don't like adding things, but just given timing. Friday, I went to the city clerk conference Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Thursday was all day on elections. Part of that talked about what some municipalities are basically, I'm going to call it contracting out the election commissions to the county. For the main reason is they do 3 out of 4 years they're doing elections. They're trained on their equipment, they're trained on rules, compared to municipal commissions, basically once every 4 years. Ours is really not active right now. We have to get active. That's part of our next steps. But we definitely probably have to replace 2 out of 3. So we'd have 1 that would be trained. But in looking at it, I just wanted to bring it up for discussion with y'all, because there's a process with anything. You gotta basically abolish your ordinance that establishes your current municipal commission, and then we'd have to have an agreement with KK's office to use the Hancock County Circuit Clerk's office. Basically, we would do qualifying. We would still be paying for some supplies. We would still be doing absentee voting, all no change. Election day, the circuit clerk's office would provide poll workers that, again, have been doing this every election, as well as the county election commission and the resolution board on election day. So they would handle basically the day of. Cost-wise, we still have to pay all those people. This way we'd just be reimbursing for cost to the county. The real change or increase, which kind of is new to us, would be a fee to the circuit clerk's office to actually take on that liability, take on the responsibility. So I kind of call it as probably a wash in cost or a slight increase in cost. But I think, again, because of the liability getting pushed away from us and into them, and just the training of the staff who's, I say staff, that they do it, it's their equipment. I think it's worth considering. So it's really up to y'all. Either way, your city clerk will be ready to go for an election. But I wanted to say, is that something we want to entertain and discuss or not?
Yeah, I mean, and Mike, and that would be the same equipment used in the most recent national election, right?
Correct.
Okay, but it's a
We're
matter
using their equipment.
okay,
One
but
way.
that wasn't what was used on our last municipal, was it? Or was it a different system? Because I know you said that's a little
We
more
were actually trying to, Kyle, it's funny, we're actually trying to figure that out. We can't remember if KK was trying to figure out when they bought that. We either just missed it or were the first to use it.
The last municipal election was the first time.
First
we
to
used
used it. That's
we
what,
were
yes.
first to use it.
First time we used it. That's right. Because, yes.
It's 2021 for y'all.
So, and this is complex machinery. It's not, some easy. You've got to know how to work it, and you have to be ready. The big thing, ready if something goes wrong the day of.
Yeah, it's not only that, last time we borrowed, it ended up costing us, because one bumped out the truck. Yeah, Humpty Dumpty went down the trail there, but, so it takes all liability off the city and everything, and, they responsible for setting up, getting everything going and all.
So they set up the poles, everything in the poles and all that.
Yeah.
Does it free up a lot of time for our employees that normally get involved with these elections every 4 years?
4 years.
Now we wouldn't have to do it.
I mean, again, we're gonna still have the things that are happening 8 to 5 for absentee voting, qualifications, all that stuff that's happening. Is really, the main change was election day with poll workers, election commission, as they do their piece. Yeah.
And the other thing, Gene, the main thing is, and I'm speaking just because I was here 4 years ago, the main thing when you see with your employees is when you have your own election commission, you really have to have somebody still gathering the troops.
Right.
So you had multiple city employees that were, I don't want to say overseeing the election commission, but when you don't have an election commission that's doing this yearly, that ultimately is what happens, because it's, hey, where's training going? Oh, wait, let me go set up training for you, because the election commission aren't city employees. So, so that's where a substantial timing comes in of tying up, I would say, at least 2 employees, a substantial amount of time kind of coordinating with the election commission. And that would all be taken off of the city.
Is there any foreseeable disadvantages of going this route?
I personally cannot think of one.
I couldn't think of any. I mean, again, I want to be honest, there's a new charge that we would pay the circuit clerk's office. That's a disadvantage.
But it's still.
But I still
a
think
wash.
it's,
I mean,
I think still we're at, because we're some savings, I think that's kind of a wash or a slight increase. But I think the increase offsets.
I think we
The
budgeted
risk.
40,000 on this last year, but again, I think we figured poll workers was 125, 140, and I think they 200 now, plus the rental of the machines and everything, so that 40,000 is probably, I mean, it was a good number, we thought, but looking at it now, what they're being paid and everything, and, you know, some other expenses and all, we, you know.
Your other big advantage here, and I'm not selling any of us short because we all have great contacts too, but the circuit clerk's office and the election commission works with the elections division at the Secretary of State's office. If something goes wrong, I mean, when we met with KK and asking questions, she's texting the guy who's in training, he's out teaching training, and he's responding back to her. So that's the kind of relationships that your circuit clerk's office has, because they do this so regularly with the Secretary of State's office. So, you know, heaven forbid something goes wrong or we get some weird quirk. I mean, they're going to be on the phone with the Secretary of State's office, and they know exactly who to call. You know, they don't have to call the 601 number. They call the cell phone, and somebody answers the phone.
Now, the election commissioners, they're just employees of the city, or they're elected officials or appointed?
The county election commission,
They're elected.
they're
St.
elected.
Louis.
They're elected, correct.
So in Bay St. Louis, we just have city employees,
So Bay St. Louis, we would have to go in and appoint election commissioners that, I think they do them like contract employees, I think is how they do that. So with this, we would have the contract, it would be like a 4-party agreement essentially with the county. The county would sign off on this, the election commission would sign off on this, KK as circuit clerk would sign off on this, and we would sign off on this. So it would be the tri-party agreement, and the county would front the bill and the city would reimburse them. And there's direct expenses that you guys, just because it's easier, you know, your ballots, like we would still issue a PO for that, you know, that kind of stuff, just because it's easier to do it that way.
And this would just be, right now, we'd have to get the ordinance established, correct, and then post it and have any kind of input?
Yeah, so that was the rush on the time. So that's why we wanted to get the ordinance in front of you. I will tell you, looking at that ordinance, let me click on that ordinance. Most of the text of that ordinance, all the duties, that is statutory. It's copied and pasted it from the statute. And so you get the ordinance, and then what we would do is plan on at your first meeting in January, bring back with you the county, the agreement, which we have a draft of that. It looks almost just like your ordinance. Is very similar.
And just with it being this close to election, we don't see that, I mean, if we were to get this, get it posted, approved, work on it, should be no problems by the time election rolls around, right?
Wait, what are you talking about now?
Just we're a few months out.
That's what we're bringing this ordinance to y'all to do.
Just again, yesterday, after I got back, I drove in town at 5:30 Friday. So yesterday was me meeting with staff, me meeting with Heather, saying, is this a possibility? Let's go meet with KK. I think we were with her at 1:30, 2 o'clock, saying, you know, and then trying to figure out, all right, what's the mechanism, what's the tool? So looking for this text, and then trying to get it to y'all. Okay. So again, something.
And I can also tell you, I talked with the city of Oxford about this, and that's what they said is the best thing that they've done.
So y'all will bring back the tri-party agreement and the ordinance?
The ordinance is, you have the ordinance in front of you today.
Okay.
I mean, my suggestion, obviously, I'm not trying to rush you, but
do we need to get that posted though? At least, because it just got on here. When did this?
Today.
No, there's no posting requirements. So what the ordinance process is, once you adopt an ordinance, then the ordinance has to be published. So that's where typically there's a 30-day lag. If it's passed unanimously, it can go into effect immediately. But once an ordinance is passed, then we publish it in the Seacoast Echo. Twice? Once or twice, I can't remember. Once.
So timeline, you're looking at everything to be rolling for the next election?
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
Correct. And this just gives us an idea of what we do, because remember, so we have to also contract with the parties. So the way this would work, we wouldn't have to contract with them. The parties would contract directly with the Hancock County Election Commission. So that's another thing that we just need to know, because if they're going to do that, the parties need to get that contract to the county so that they can get it approved. If it's us, they need to get it to us.
And we have received letters from both Democrat and Republican about holding a primary. So that letter of intent's with us. The next thing is to put a contract in place. So, you know, I'm meeting with our staff Thursday afternoon to go, okay, what's our calendar? What do we got to be doing? Okay. So we've got advertisement already sent to the Seacoast Echo to run, I think think 3 times every other week about qualifying from now until the end of January. So that's one of our first steps.
So this needs to be done tonight, basically, to meet the timeline, or?
I mean, I would,
Be ideal.
it would be ideal. There's no hesitations or no questions that we can't answer. I do think this is the best for the city as a whole. I think it will make everybody's lives a lot easier.
All right. Mr. Omen? Please do.
John Omen, 110 Demont Avenue. Getting back 3 minutes I gave away earlier. As a former poll manager and as someone who's been drafted a couple of times onto election commissions in nearby municipalities, you can't do anything better than this. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Hammond.
Thank you.
You got 2.5 minutes to spare. Sure you want to use it?
Yeah.
He reserved that for January.
Oh, yeah. Just-
I got some ideas about the highway system. Who drafted it? Can I get his number?
All right, it's the pleasure of the council.
I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve the proposed ordinance.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilman Hoffman, second by Councilman DeSalvo. Any further discussion? With the motion?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 6-0.
Gary's the
Thank you.
quiet one.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Is that it, Mr. Russo? We're good?
That's me.
All right. Consent agenda. Any questions from the council?
We never received the minutes for signature at this end of them.
Someone's holding up the line.
Slackers.
All right.
I'm scared I might catch something.
Last call for any questions, comments. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Knobloch,
Second.
second by Councilman Hoffman. Discussion.
Only discussion I had, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
The harbor billing software, is that the only option we really have, or good option, or what? I guess, because it links, I mean, I know.
Right. They've been using the utilities module for invoicing, and you can't, it's set up for utilities, so you really have no flexibility in what you're doing for these other 180 people, whatever the number is. So this allows them to have, using the accounts receivable module, they can set it up more of a, probably more of a customer account like Gary would, you guys would have in your business, compared to the
Is this
utilities module
specific
is
for
very.
harbors?
What's that?
Is this specific for like harbors?
No, it's
Just
just,
the AR module.
for Encode, it's just an accounts receivable.
'Cause I
so-
thought they had a software that they were using.
They're using something for managing, but it's not doing the billing. The utilities have been billing probably for 2 years plus or whatever it is now. But again, we've made it work, but it's not ideal.
I was just curious, so, okay.
Anything else?
That's it.
Let's see. We have a motion.
You made a motion in a second, that was discussion.
Yeah, that was discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, with the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, aye, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Sorry, I got lost there on the time. All right, next up is a motion to spread the cash balances, RG revenue report, revenue and expense report, grant revenue report, payroll, hours report, harbor report, chamber business meeting report, and gaming and sales tax report.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman DeSalvo.
Second.
Second by Councilman Davis. Give her that one. She beat you to it.
Okay.
Any discussion? With the motion?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 6-0. All right. Attorney's report?
Just executive session if you guys want to discuss the, Bob Warner.
Here's got a few questions.
Okay. All right. Get a motion, go into executive session.
Yeah, motion to go into executive session.
Motion, go into executive session.
Motion to
Merry
go in
Christmas,
closed
Mr.
session.
John.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
motion to go to closed session.
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Hoffman,
Second.
second by Councilman DeSalvo.
Caitlin, that's,
Vote the motion.
Bob
Aye.
Warner versus the City of Bay St. Louis,
Aye.
which is a
Aye.
notice of
Aye.
appeal that was filed.
And aye, Doug.
I owe,
Six,
I'm working.
motion carried 6-0 to go into closed session.